And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to Dan-A-Plooza. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our previous guest, cosplayer Lady J Cosplay, and our last guest, who was also a burlesque performer and an empath and psychic medium, Cole Kane Phoenix. I'd like to welcome my guest now at this time, Tatas for now.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for coming on to the show. For those watching and future watching, Tatas for now is a burlesque dancer and performer, and she has an up-and-coming show on the 28th of this month at the Sassafras Saloon. So make sure to check that out if you are in the Hollywood area. For those living in the Hollywood. Also follow the Dan-A-Plooza Facebook page and the YouTube channel, Dan the Man Vids. And also keep in mind, we have more guests coming May 27th. We have the Macabre Moon models panel, 4 different models. So enjoy that. That'll be for an hour. We have Eden Ivory, who is a burlesque performer, on the 27th, and the Savage Queen, Megan D. Francisco. So make sure to check all of that out. Now let's get back to my guest, Tatas for now. What do you like most about being a burlesque performer?
I think that the I want to say the glamour. I have my background in costume design, and so I was always really attracted to all the rhinestones and all the pretty bras and the feathers and things like that. And so for me, the just the heightened experience of self is one of my favorite things.
And I think that that's interesting to go from making the costumes to putting on the costumes and being the performer into the limelight. So that way, does it kind of help, like, if you are kind of the performer and being a costume designer, if you have any costume rip, wear and tear, do you just fix it yourself?
Yeah, it's really helpful. It's been helpful, especially with like the fun breakaway costumes like tearaway pants or like magic bras that just release. Um, I think my background has given me a lot more uh, kind of the tips and tricks are ingrained. Like I've learned a lot through the way, so it becomes easier when you're then putting that into your own costume. But it has been kind of different to be the one putting on the costume and wearing it and having to work with it, which is always really fun.
Exactly. What would you say is kind of like some of the positive aspects from performing in front of a live audience versus performing in a virtual audience?
I have only done a couple of virtual shows. They were all live. And I really like live performance. So I'm really happy that we've, for the most part, moved on to,
Right.
I do exclusively live performances now. And I'm so much more excited to be doing that, to be quite honest. Because you get more energy feedback from the audience. And that to me is what's really important when I perform is I want to be feeding off of my audience. And I really like, rather than being on, I like to be on a stage, but I really love venues where you can be in between the audience and in the round around the audience. And that's what really was missing for me during virtual shows is like you have an audience, but you can't see them and you can't hear them screaming and you can't see them smiling and you can't go up and like put your boa around them.
Yeah.
And I miss performing in that aspect. So I'm really happy that everything's back and on track and looking bright for the future of live performance.
Yeah, and that was a challenge also, because I've been on that opposite end of just being an attendee and a fan and watching it virtually, and like sometimes I'm a little slower on the keyboard, and I want to show my appreciation, but I don't want to think that they didn't think I was watching, so I'm like, I don't know, fire emoji, and just post.
It's hard. It's hard because a lot of the time, like the chat moves, it waits until the end and then it moves so quickly and then you're already on to the next performer. So it's always like, oh, is that comment for me? Was it for the next performer? It's always appreciated when people get behind their keyboards and type a little something. But it's not quite like hearing those hoot and hollers in real life.
Oh yeah. Definitely. So with moving forward, is there any new challenges that kind of lay ahead from you from getting out of the virtual spectrum into the live performance?
I think one of the challenges that's been really it's been fun. It's been a challenge, but it's also been really rewarding, and I find that I really like it. When I do shows at Sassafras Saloon and when I do shows at Idle Hour with the Broad Brigade, their stages work differently. So the Broad Brigade at Idle Hour, they have a stage that's in the round. So there's a tree in the middle, and then there's like a round space, like a little donut, and
Oh,
then they have
wow.
audience on every single side. So that was doing a show there for the first time was a big challenge because you have to find a way to connect and interact with your entire audience, and you have to find a way to keep moving around that donut so that everyone gets a good view of you at some point and you don't leave too many people out. But I found that I really enjoy performing that way. So the first time I did it, I was a little I was nervous because I wanted to make sure that everyone got a good show and I wasn't just staying in one
Yeah.
spot and only giving the people in these seats a great show.
Yeah.
But I've gotten more used to it. And Sassafras Saloon kind of works the same way where you have they have a stage that's kind of up high. You can use the stage, but since I am so passionate about the audience experience as well, I choose not to use the stage. And there's like a walkway, and you can choose to perform in the walkway. And that is a challenge too, because if I last time I performed there, I performed a number that I'd done just on the regular stage before, and it's like, okay, how do you translate this number then to walking up and down this aisleway for the whole 4 minutes, trying to interact with your audience? And there's no really it makes it challenging sometimes too, because sometimes there are costume reveals also where like you want that space where no one can see you so that you can do something kind of tricky and sneaky. But when everyone can see you, you have to figure out how to work with it so that you can still have that magical effect while everyone is watching you from every angle.
Yeah. And I was just thinking when you said about walking that whole donut, you don't want to like, hey, she only went halfway. She only did half a donut. But I love that you want to, use the whole entrance and aisleways and perform in that. I think sometimes we see performers and like you've seen shows where people have done that and then they just use the stage, and it just brings a different element to being an audience participant when it's kind of like close at you, when it's just presented just far away.
Yeah. And certain elements definitely work better on stage.
Oh yeah.
But, yeah, I like to be in the audience when I can, and then I try to adjust my acts as necessary to make that work.
I think that's important. It always is that. So would you say like you are very good at like kind of like improvising and just going like the snap of your fingers, or do you just kind of more leaned into it and see what happens?
Usually when I'm preparing an act, I have improvised acts before, and I never feel quite as confident as when I have time to choreograph and rehearse and things like that. So usually I'll get my song and I'll start to get my act together, and I will figure out the beats. So like, okay, I know I want to do this at this point. I know the gloves come off here. I know the corset comes off there. I know at the end it wants to be this. And then in between is where I'll start to kind of improvise as long as I hit those big
Moments.
targets.
Yeah.
Then along the way, everything else can kind of be not fluff, but there's room for spur of the moment kinds of things. And you can play with your audience more, and you can lean into the live theater part of things.
Yep. And I feel like that's a good way to kind of plan that, so that way you're knowing where you're going, and then that way you don't fall short.
Especially with the stage at Idle Hour that's in the round, I'll practice my number in my head. I'll be like, okay, during this part of the song, I want to be over here. And during that part, I move to the 12 o'clock position. Then we're at the 3 o'clock position and 6 o'clock. And that going over it mentally helps me make sure that, because that's like a whole other choreography. Is like on a stage, you have it, and then you have to think about it, like with the movement involved. And so that I also plan out. I plan out like for those beats where exactly I'll be, and then everything else is kind of like wherever I am is good.
You're better at that than I am, especially from being a stage performer. I'd be like, oh no, I'm at 10. I'm supposed to be at 2. I better scamper on over there. So if you could perform any stage, like any choice of stage, what would it be like, if you could choose any kind of performance venue? What is kind of like the dream performance space for you?
I think I'm not sure that I have a particular theater itself in mind. Like the beauty of burlesque shows are always fabulous at the Globe Theater. But
Hmm.
I love, like I said, I love the shows that are more like the bar show kind of theme where
Oh
the
yeah.
audience is pretty intermingled. Any time that I get to do that, I'm really happy. So I guess my ideal performance space uh, would be something like that where you're on the same level as the audience and you get a lot of that connection, which I know is a little bit vague, but I think I think that's just what makes me happy. Any venue that has that checks all my boxes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Before the pandemic, I like to, when people think of that, they think of like many years ago or something, like a flashback, before the pandemic, I actually saw a burlesque show, and they did it kind of like similar in a bar. And then you had the round tables, and then the performer could go to those round tables. And, you didn't really need like a lot of things on that stage, to work with that. Is Are you that kind of performer where you don't need like a lot of props or accessories and you'll just use whatever? Or do you like when they have like a little bit of an assortment of things to work with?
It depends. I mean, for all my acts, I bring my own props. And it really depends on the act. Like I have one act where I take off a robe and I take off my bra and that's it. But then I have like my maid act and that I take off a robe, I take off my gloves, I put on new gloves. I have, oh, a cat. Oh my
This is
gosh, that cat is cute.
this is Tilly.
Hi,
Tilly,
Tilly.
um, Tilly is likes to wander, and she likes to steal a little bit of the spotlight. So this is the cute
Understandable.
cat moment of the segment where she just does that. Nobody has any ice cream. I'm sorry. We'll get some after.
Like a pirate has a parrot on the shoulder, you have a cat on your shoulder.
Yeah, she does. Like if I have an ice cream, she'll be like with the paw, like right over there on my shoulder, and then she'll be like this, like licking it and then looking away as I catch her doing it. So she's
Oh,
very resourceful.
you know what? The cat in the frame, I totally, what was the, oh, we were talking about props. I was
Yeah,
so distracted by the
that's my
cat.
prop. My prop is Tilly. Tilly, good job.
There we go. Yeah. So you work with props just the same.
Yeah.
But my maid act, I have the robe that I take off, I have the gloves, I put on new gloves. I have that one's really fun for me because I have one of my props, I have a water bucket, like a bucket full of water, and I have a sponge
Oh
and I
wow.
bring a sponge over myself.
Hmm.
Um, and then I have a laundry basket, and then I take off a bra, and I take off my maid dress. So that one is my most prop heavy act right now. And it's really fun, but it's also more cumbersome to bring around, and it's you have to make sure everything's like set perfectly so that you can make sure that you have
Right.
access throughout the show. Um, so I think it's dependent on whatever the vision is for the act that I'm performing or the needs for the show. Like that act was created for like a fetish and fantasy show. And I didn't really know what to do. So I was like, oh, I'll be a French maid. And now it's one of my favorite acts. So just depends on the
Me.
needs of everyone.
The- um, but I think that that's great that you're very resourceful in what is given to you, and sometimes as a performer, we get sometimes things just thrown at us, and we're like, how are we going to make this into this?
Yeah. And that's one of the like clever and fun challenges, I feel.
Definitely. Um, so moving on, let me have do you have kind of an inspiration or a role model?
Let's see. I feel like there's so many. I feel that's also so vague, but I feel like I am very lucky to be in the burlesque community because
Right.
everyone that you're constantly meeting, it's made of a lot of people that have you heard that phrase like a candle doesn't lose its flame if it lights another candle? That's
Yeah.
paraphrased, but there are a lot of people that are really willing to help out people and like if they have an awesome glove peel, it's like, oh my goodness, how'd you learn that? Like, I'll teach you. Everyone is really really great at working together and really great at sharing their knowledge. And so I feel like rather than just picking one person, I feel like every time I do a show, there's always someone new who's inspiring me. There's always someone new who's nice enough to share their tips and tricks or tell me where they got their bra from. Um, and everyone's just so lovely that I feel like the community as a whole is a constant source of inspiration and a constant role model. And I really hope that everything continues that way and more performers start to come in and performers with more experience can give them tips and tricks so that then when they get more experience, they can give others tips and tricks. And it's just a nice little Passover hand-me-down throughout the ages.
I had a cheesy joke in mind when you were, I know the circle of life, but instead it's the circle of burlesque,
Yeah.
Just keeps unwinding. So that
Exactly.
was this is my nerdy joke for the segment. But yeah, I think that it's really important that we work together, kind of like, especially now, because you went from not performing, and being limited to virtual to now coming together and performing live. So I think it's important now to kind of work with each other and push each other forward. And it's just I'm just glad that more people are doing that, because before, you had some people that maybe wouldn't share things as much, but I'm glad that it's moving forward, because I feel like we need to be more united together in the performing art cause.
Exactly. It is a big unification. And I feel like everyone has kind of had that same experience of um, being kind of off for the past couple of years. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of rejoicing is happening now that people are back into venues.
And that's what's important, is to try to get back to that, and do you feel like you kind of got to like ease back into it, like kind of like slowly, like kind of like dip your toe back in, maybe I do this and that when you're first, starting to perform live, and then the more, it becomes like a repertoire and that same old feeling?
I feel like it wasn't so much a dip toes back in. I feel like for me personally, it was exciting to be back on stage. I used to be like a
Right.
really dorky high school theater kid, so like I grew up like in musicals and stuff like that. Um, and it was kind of sad to not be on stage for a while.
Oh
And
yeah.
then being back, it feels like the audience is more eager to accept performers and performances and see what they want to see. And the performers are like extra eager to give the audience a good show. And I feel like that, like, what was it, like year and a half, 2 year hiatus,
Right.
has just kind of rejuvenated everyone. I think it was definitely different, like the first like couple shows, but it was a much needed, much wanted difference. It's like, oh yeah, this is what it's supposed to be.
Exactly. So is there a new kind of challenge that you're going to challenge yourself as a performer? Are you looking for new ways to kind of challenge yourself?
You know what I'm working on right now is I'm challenging myself to, and this maybe not it won't seem like a challenge perhaps to others, but my challenge for myself actually that I've kind of instated in the past week is I am challenging myself to set aside more time to practice my performances and get my costumes in order,
Right.
because I think that'll yield better results for my acts and for my audience that come to the shows. And I'm really looking forward to challenging myself to create better work that I spend a little bit more time on and give some great results.
Yep. And I think it is a challenge. I think sometimes we become comfortable in what we've done, and we're like, we know this, I do this, that, and then you do it, and then you're like, that didn't, So
I think like I'll usually like get an act ready and then I'll do like a month performing it, maybe a
mhm.
month and a half, maybe 2 months sometimes. And then by the end, I'm just like, I'm ready. I love this act, but I'm ready for a brand new one that'll be a little bit more a little new. Like I'm just ready to shake things up. And so I think that my challenge of trying to incorporate more time into my day-to-day life to create routines um, will just help me build some more fun stuff and get that creative juice flowing.
Yeah, and that's definitely important. Do you ever consider, because I've talked to different burlesque performers, do you ever consider doing like, I know some people, they do like fire performing and different things of that spectrum. Is that something that interests you, or do you do that?
I actually started fire performing before I started burlesque performing.
Oh, wow.
And I'll still do, there are certain venues that do allow fire, so I will always do fire when I get a chance. I did usually I do shows at El Cid in Hollywood, and they allow like small fire eating, so I'll do that
Okay.
whenever I get the opportunity. And then some shows, like I do shows at Alex's Bar in Long Beach, and I just started working with Transplants Brewing Company in Palmdale, and both those venues are,
Right.
so every venue I do is so fun, but those two in particular will let me do big fire. Like I have a fire parasol and I have my fire fans.
Oh, wow.
And I love fans. Like I love feather fans. I love fire fans. The fire fans are like my big love in the like fire prop world. So I relish the opportunity that I get to whip those babies out, because I'll practice with them, but it won't be, or it'll be like a private gig, but like an audience won't see it besides
Right.
that airing that private gig. And so it was just really nice I just had that show like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now. And it was just so nice to be on stage with my fans, but fire fans. And
Your fans, you know, just
yeah, just being able to like really bring what I thought was it's really, I don't know, it's really fun. It's really stunning to like have 10 wicks of fire just like flying around your head and almost burning your hair off. But to answer your question, yes, I've definitely more than dabbled in fire performing. And that's been my one like big thing aside from burlesque performing, but I incorporate it into my shows.
yeah. Have you noticed sometimes the audience intake? Because we know how sometimes the audience is like, they're either like afraid of fire or like they love it, you know, like.
What I've realized is during when I do fire acts, a lot of the times the audience is like dead silent. And I was getting I wouldn't say self-conscious about it, but I was like, oh no, they're not enjoying this. This isn't what they came here for. And I'll be like, oh, I don't think that they really liked it. And I'll talk to the audience after, like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that was so cool. How do you know how to do that? Well, you could have gave me a little shout.
Clap a little or something.
And someone at one of the last shows that I actually was like a month or two ago. It wasn't one of the last shows I did. It was a while ago. But they were like, I was just dead silent the whole time because it looked so dangerous. And there's that element of like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? Is she gonna set herself on fire? Is she not gonna set herself on fire? Is she gonna be okay? Can she eat the fire? So that felt good to hear, that it was more of a speechlessness rather than unenjoyment.
Right. Just like when I was talking with my previous guest, he also is a fire performer, and he always pointed out that sometimes you're just going to get burned, you know, from doing that. It's inevitable. But
I have a couple burns on my body right now because I accidentally got set on fire a month ago.
Oh no.
Yay.
But as he had said, and I've talked to others, they're more focused on where the movement is going and what they're doing with that, you know, and how much they control the flame in their movements. Is that similar for what you think when you're doing that?
I think my focus, definitely I got hyper focused on like what I'm doing. I feel like when I perform burlesque too, I am more in tune to my facial expressions. But when I do fire, I just kind of plaster on like whatever expression I'm supposed to have, because my mind is not focusing on my face, it's focusing on like the danger that's in my hands. And I feel like it's definitely you have to mentally keep a little bit more track of exactly what you're doing with your body and your hands. And the flame, because it is that added element of danger, and you can't just like let it go willy-nilly and loosey-goosey, or else people are going to get hurt and the place is going to burn down and you're going to catch your hair on fire. So I think it is a little bit more of a hyper focus on movement.
Right. And I think that was an excellent point, and I'm glad that you do focus that, and I hope to see some more of your wonderful fire magic.
Yeah.
I know sometimes because I'm friends with, sometimes they'll come near me with the fire, and I'm like, don't come too close to me. Like, I'm glad to like watch it, but I ain't touching it, man.
I was doing a private party back in October that I got hired for, and it was someone's birthday. It was like a Halloween like dark circus themed birthday, which
Oh
was pretty
yeah.
cool. And I had my fire eating torches, and I asked the birthday girl if she wanted me to like boop, like touch the fire torch in her hand. She was like,
Yeah.
no.
No.
But then someone was like, I'll do it for her. And it's just like a little just like a
Yeah.
second touch. And he was like, dude, that was cool. So that felt lots of people were very afraid of it. And I've been it's really interesting to see people's reactions. So like, oh, so they're like, oh my God, can you teach me? And I was like, that's great that you do it, but please keep it very far away from me.
Yeah. I feel like I would be okay if somebody like showed it to me, but if they just handed it to me, I would hand it back.
Yeah, that's not very safe to just hand it off to somebody like that.
No, that's never happened, but you always sometimes just as a fan or just watching, you just like, no, I don't want to touch it at all. So, and you mentioned that you were always a big theater fan. Do you have like some theater plays or musicals that are very close to you even to this day?
Let's take a trip down memory lane. Um, you know what? They were like such a big part of my teenage years and my growing up, which is also why I think like burlesque came. So I don't want to say easy because it's not really like an easy thing, but it was so an accessible option for me because it kind of felt like
Right.
being back in my back in my prime.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. Let's see. I think I always really enjoyed Sondheim musicals. Like Sweeney Todd was always my favorite. I saw it when I was 13 for the first time, and I was like obsessed. And let's see, what else? I know that there's more in my mind, but it's like when someone asks me my favorite restaurant, every restaurant and every single food I've ever eaten in my life leaves my mind. I went and visited New York like before pandemic,
Right.
and I saw Beetlejuice on Broadway, and that was actually excellent. It was really good, really fun. And that was a really great theater experience as a whole. And that was, I think, oh, you know what? There was another play that I saw right before everything shut down, like 2 days maybe before everything shut down in Santa Monica called Home. And it was this beautiful, gorgeous play. Most of it was just visual, like it didn't have a script. And I don't know how they did this, but they had this set of this house, and it was based off of this book that I can't remember the name of right now. It was like like an art, like picture kind of book. And it showed the stories of several different people over several different periods of time, like all living in this house. But it was kind of like it was one of those like clear photos where you can like layer on top of the other and like see more layers and parts as you put that together.
Layer effect, yeah.
Yeah, it was like that in a way that I can't really describe. But it was just so gorgeous. And then at the end, they invited people up from the audience for this like dinner party sort of thing. And it ended up with just like 50 people on stage in this huge celebration that no one knew was like going to happen. And it was so beautiful and so stunning. And I actually, in my old wallet, I still have my ticket stub because I liked it so much. But that was like a truly, truly fine piece of theater that I really loved. And I don't know that it'll play again, but I really hope it does because I would go see it again in a heartbeat. It was awesome.
Wow.
That felt super nerdy to like delve into that and describe it. But
yeah. And I think that was oh man, it's kind of like I would like to see that right now, and just see how that all unfolds. For me, I did like Sweeney Todd, but Rent's one of my favorite musicals.
Every mom's favorite is Rent.
Yes.
You can't go wrong. 525,600 minutes.
Yeah. I love that. I even like some of the kind of like the songs where will I lose my dignity, because it's got kind of like that softer melody. I just enjoy because they have different song tempos throughout that whole musical.
Actually on Thursday, this past Thursday, at Idlehour, the stage is kind of shaped like a donut with Broad Brigade. They had Broad May, which is their Broadway themed show that they do in May. And that was super fun. That was like a blast from the past to be able to perform burlesque to a Broadway number.
Oh, wow. That would have been really, really awesome to see. So,
yeah.
I bet it was. So as we're getting ready to wrap up, is there anything you want to say or promote or before we end?
Um, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what to tell the people. Just thank you for tuning in, and I hope to. If you ever come to a show, come say hi. I love talking to people after the show and at intermission and things like that. It's really fun for me to see that people are enjoying the show, and I enjoy talking to people. So come say hi if you ever see me.
Yep, and that's for anybody watching. If you're in the West Coast area, because I know we have people from different time zones, so check out the Sassy Frass Saloon if you're in Hollywood on this week, and you can also follow Tatas for now on Instagram. So make sure to follow her up and like her amazing posts because they are amazing. So. So this is going to wrap it up for Dan-A-Plooza. I'd like to thank my guest, Tatas, for now.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And have a good evening. And